Oh, it's Facebook Live, it's the infant feeding team. Well, me on my own today. Naomi's on annual leave, so you've just got the me on my own. So looking to see if anybody's arriving to join me. I hope I'm not going to be totally on my own, as in out there and here. That would be sad. Oh, lovely, I can see some faces coming up now. How wonderful. I thought I'd talk about accessing help, because I know that's been quite a challenge. We've been really busy in clinic, and I know that can be a real challenge. So places that will be able to offer you help and things going forward. And I thought I might talk about skin to skin as well. But obviously, you know, this is here for you, this session. This is an infant feeding session for you out there, whether you're waiting for your baby to come, whether you've already got your baby, you could have a baby of a year old or whatever, and you've got any questions about feeding. That can be breastfeeding, bottle feeding. We'll even tackle a little bit of weaning if you want us to. But it's anything to do with feeding specifically. Not great when it comes to all the other things that are going on, so those might be better to any questions more about your just general care and visiting and things like that. Much better to be signposted to the Ask the Midwife sessions, or your own midwife. Contact your own midwife and ask them. So there are plenty of places that you can reach us. So yeah, so this session, I say, is specific about feeding, and we're missing Naomi today because she's on annual leave. She's been cycling in the Lake District, a very fit lady. So I was thinking we would talk about skin to skin as a starter. I've talked about skin to skin for ages and ages. So anybody who has had any help from us will know that skin to skin is one of the first things we'll talk about as a really, really good way of resetting your breastfeeding journey. So thinking about things that will really help with feeding. So whilst I'm waiting for any of you to put your questions through, I can see there are a few of you watching already, then in the meantime we'll have a quick chat about that. So many of you will know about, heard about the importance of skin to skin in the, sort of the first hour after birth, but what people don't always take on board is how important it is going forward, and how it can make a really big difference for the baby going forward. It can be a fantastic reset if you're having any breastfeeding problems and need to have some support. So what it does is it brings out the natural breast seeking and breastfeeding behaviour. We love this leaflet that's been done talking about the magical hour and why it's so important in the first hour. And a lot of this is still really relevant, even if you're looking at doing skin to skin later. I noticed my computer has shut itself down, so I'm just going to get back on again so I can see if you send me any questions. So I can see there's a few of you up there, and be ready with questions. I would love to hear from you and hear what your questions are this week. We have the most fantastic array of questions, usually, and a lovely bunch of regulars, so I will see if any of you send me a question or not. So thinking about that skin to skin, when you first have your baby, for those of you that haven't had your baby yet, that first hour of skin to skin after your baby is born is absolutely fantastic. It's your baby's opportunity to learn all about you, to learn about your breasts, because your baby's never met a set of breasts before and has no preconceived ideas about what you're going to be like. Whatever you have is what your baby will learn to deal with. It's your baby's opportunity to learn how you smell, the feel of you, the smell of you. They already know your voice, that's really important. They already know how you sound. They know the other members of your house, whether that's a partner or other children. They know those voices already, so that's really reassuring, hearing your voice. And when they're born, they're usually quite quiet and alert. So we look at our first stages, and they lie, and the first thing they'll do is usually cry, and then they just relax on you. After that, they start to waken up, and they start to look around and start rooting, and then they start to have a move, try and move around. And if a baby's put, sort of, if you look at these pictures, further down the chest, they start to work their way up. And I know this is in a mirror form, and it's very difficult for you to read it, you won't be able to read it, but you can see this baby isn't actually right on the breast, but he has forward movement, and this baby will be able to use his toes and push forward, and that's what babies can do, which is why we don't want your baby put too high. So if you're doing skin to skin, your baby wants to be at the breast level or lower, not higher, because they can't come back down, they can go forward. So thinking about when you've had your baby, having your baby skin to skin and having them slightly lower than the breast, and then they'll work their way up. We'll go in the English, I think, rather than the Spanish, because it's on both sides. So the babies will rest. This little baby's having a rest here, will rest for periods of time. And then they do what they call the crawling bit of it, and then they familiarise. Now this is what I was saying about they learn what your breast is like. So on this picture, this baby might use its hands to put them on the nipple, it might put its mouth on the nipple and start licking around. That isn't the baby missing, that's the baby learning. So don't be in a hurry to get your baby to breastfeed. Allow your baby to lick around the nipple, put their hand on the nipple, learn what you've got, and then they'll get the way on. What baby's looking for is where the baby can smell the smell of the breast, because those little bobbles that you have on your nipple, if you look at your nipple, many of you will have little bobbles around it. They're called Montgomery's tubercles, and they exude a scent, and it's the same scent as your baby has on their hands, because it's the scent of amniotic fluid. So a baby, when they're born, is used to that smell because they've had it on their hands, and they know to follow that scent. But they can also see that difference of light and dark. So there's two things going on. They're using two of their senses. They're using sight and they're using smell to work out where to go. And that's how the baby makes their way to the breast. And they literally crawl from being born and put on the abdomen until they're on the breast and feeding. So this one is now feeding. And then eventually they go to sleep. Now we talk about these 9 stages because that's what they go through, and they're really, really important, these 9 stages, from the point of view of not interrupting them. So ideally your baby is born, put skin to skin, and does not move from you, not to be weighed, not to have obs. It stays on your chest until the baby has fed. After your baby has fed, then your baby can go for a cuddle with someone else or be moved or dressed or whatever. But until your baby has fed, this is the priming opportunity for your baby to learn about you, how to breastfeed, what you smell like, all these important things that will really get breastfeeding off to a good start. So we've started doing antenatal sessions for mothers who've had breastfeeding problems. And the first thing we always talk about is making sure that you get that early skin to skin and it's not interrupted. If a baby's interrupted, let's say they get to stage 6, which is the crawling stage, and someone decides they want to do a set of obs and takes the baby off you, or something else happens and the baby's removed, when your baby's put back on you, they go right back to 1. And they have to work their way all the way down these stages again. And the problem is that the sleep will come before feeding has happened. So we don't want that to happen, because the baby runs out of time to have that feed. So ideally we want your baby to have gone through all of this, breastfeed, and then if the baby needs to be weighed, then if your baby needs to go to someone else, that can happen. So this is what we mean by the 9 stages. And as I said, this is really important in the first hours after birth, and it's usually an hour to an hour and a half. But it's also a really good thing to put your baby skin to skin if you're having any breastfeeding problems. It's like putting your baby back to their home. A baby will go there and go, it's like you walking in the door from this hospital. You've gone home, you've been in here for 2 nights or whatever, and you walk in your front door and you just go, oh, I'm so pleased to be home. That's what your baby feels when you put your baby skin to skin. And it's a lovely reset for them. Now I can see some questions coming through, so I'm going to get on with those and keep them coming. And we can talk about where to get care and where to get help afterwards. So bear with me, as I'm on my own, I have to do all the reading and all the answers. So Charlotte is our regular with her daughter Alicia. She says, hi hon, hope you're well. Me and Alicia have been ill, but we're getting better, trying to get food and drink onto Alicia. Any tips on getting water into her? Just making it available. Charlotte, just make sure you've got water around, lots of different cups maybe. 6 to begin with if she's been unwell. Poor love, that's really not much fun. And I hope you're feeling better. And are you back from Devon? Hope you had a good time with your mum. Amina has said, hi ladies, just me today. 2 questions this week. I'm due to have a hernia op. The surgeon is saying I can't breastfeed for 48 hours after. Surely this can't be right, considering you can feed straight after a C-section. Good point. Secondly, on NHS Start, it says to give food then milk. However, you and the health visitor say give milk then food. Yes, we do. And before one is, food before one is just for fun. Well remembered. Why is the advice conflicting? I've really no idea, and I'm sorry it is, but I'm glad to hear we and the Health Visitor are saying the same thing. Very much feed your baby with breast milk first and then give anything else afterwards. It's causing a big debate in our mum group on Facebook as all receiving different advice. We start weaning in a month, so wanted to clarify. Well, certainly from our point of view, Amina, it is food before one, it's just for fun. So start with breast milk, because that's where your baby's going to get the majority of their calories. So baby before one is, they're learning about food, and we can't rely on them to take enough food in. So breastfeed and then offer afterwards, some bits, whatever you're going to do, whether you're doing baby-led weaning or you're not. So we would definitely be saying that. Going back to your hernia op, can I signpost you to the Breastfeeding Network? Literally as it sounds, Breastfeeding Network, and there are some fantastic resources, drugs in breast milk resources, and there is information about having an operation. If you're having that operation here in the trust, then by all means get in touch with us, and we'll be more than happy to email and say to your doctor that they don't need to. We've over this period, you can imagine, we've had some very unwell mums who have been on all sorts of medications, and practically none of them have had to stop breastfeeding. So I anticipate that just to have I agree with you, having a hernia operation should not preclude you from breastfeeding unless you're on a medication that we don't know about. The normal anaesthetic medications are just fine. So perhaps email me or email the team, and we can signpost you to Breastfeeding Network if you haven't found it, and we can certainly put a word in for you. So a good question. So that was the first one, yeah. And I'm going back to the why are we saying different things to the NHS? I don't know, and I'm sorry about that, but certainly we're all working to BFI, Baby Friendly Initiative, and that's certainly the recommendation we would be going with, that food before one is just for fun. So breastfeed first and then offer your other foods afterwards. Sarah Jane has said, Molly and I saw the GP this week. He's not concerned about her breathing during feeding and believes that I have a quick letdown and she's finding it a bit more difficult, which is making her choke or sound like she misses a breath. That's reassuring. I'm really pleased to hear that, Sarah Jane. That's really great. So, and again, it goes back to what we've talked about before with regard to really making sure that positioning attachment is as good as you can get it, because Molly will stand the best chance possible of coping with the flow if she's got a really good mouthful. Because as Naomi was saying last week, if she goes on and it's not as deep as it could be, the milk's pooling and then she may choke. If she's on really well, the milk's going straight down as she's swallowing. So it's literally suck, swallow, suck, swallow, suck, swallow, rather than it choking. But so have a look at that. Although I know that letdowns can be really fast and babies might struggle, but I'm really glad it's nothing more concerning. Amy has said, my son is now 9 months old, still breastfeeding, but he doesn't seem to show much interest in food. I'm always trying to offer a variety of different foods before each breastfeed. Is this a common thing? Should I be worried? I don't think so. I mean, babies, we all do things at different times. Your baby will get there in the end. I'm sure he will. You'll offer him something that does interest him, and he'll think it's fun to have. I don't know if you're doing to baby-led weaning or if you're doing more pureed foods, because I would say if you're doing one, maybe try the other and see how you get on. Some babies like to have their food spoon-fed into them, and others really don't want to, much prefer to be picking it up and putting it in their mouths. So it's worth having a look. There's a lot of information about weaning foods, that you may not need it, but just for general, anybody else, on the First Steps Nutrition. First Steps Nutrition is a really, really good website. So you just literally Google First Steps Nutrition, and you'll find a lot of information about weaning foods on there. Helen Crawley, who heads it up, is an amazing woman, has done a ton of research into, information on formula foods, but she's also looked at weaning foods. She's looked at weaning foods that you can buy and weaning foods that you can make yourself. So she's a really, really good resource for having a look at sort of foods and it'll help you choose which ones are more calorific and better for your babies. So have a quick look at First Steps Nutrition. Whether it will help with your baby, Amy, to persuade him to feed, I don't know. But I think just keep trying. It will happen. It's like walking. Some babies get it at 1 and some are going to be nearly 2. So, they will do it in their own time. He will get there. as long as he's still growing. Helen has said, is there anything I can do other than colic drops to give relief for colic symptoms? Not confirmed by a doctor, but he ticks all the boxes. He's coming up to 4 weeks. Latch appears okay, but feels and a bit uncomfortable. I tried pushing him on further, advice from the midwife at day 10 check, but doesn't seem to have eased it. He's gaining lots of weight and feeding often, but I've read that latch can contribute to colic. It most definitely can, Helen. So it's interesting, because I've just had a telephone call from someone after clinic, and we had a quick chat about exactly this. She's got a 4-week-old baby, and she was telling me what's happening with feeding. And what we understand is it goes back to positioning and attachment. So I'll take that breast. So, and it goes just what I was saying a moment ago. If the baby gets a really good mouthful and goes on and really milks the breast well, they get that wonderful balance of the waterier part of the milk and the fatty part of the milk. If a baby doesn't go on quite as well, so you can see the gap, they don't milk the breast so well. So they get rewarded with a lot of the watery milk, which is chock-a-block full of sugar, so they will grow, but it doesn't have that fattier part. So you end up with babies that can be quite unsettled because they don't think they're full because they haven't had that fatty part. So they go back to the breast and they're asking for more. And they keep getting this waterier part of the feed, and that watery part is, as I said, full of sugar, which is lactose, and in their baby's tummy they've got lactase, the enzyme to break it down. So the lactose goes into the tummy and the lactase is there to break it down. But if there's too much lactose, there isn't enough lactase to break it down, and you end up with a baby with a really colicky behaviour. So they can end up with green frothy nappies, coming back to the breast very frequently, being very, very unsettled and unhappy, and it builds up over the day, it gets worse and worse, but they're probably gaining weight. So it does go down to positioning and attachment, so it would be well worth you, Helen, getting someone to have another look. And we talk about positioning all the time. It's making sure that you're getting, I'll go back to my favourite picture, that you're getting an attachment that starts like that. So when this baby goes on, the breast is not going to move and the baby's head is not going to come forward. Those are the two things that will often happen. So what we're looking for is this baby to come on absolutely straight, so the mother's hand is here and she's going to push like that. She's not going to do this. And the breast is here and it's going to stay there and it's not going to be moved. So those are the two things that really often happen, and sometimes you just can't see it yourself and you need someone else to watch. So as you're 4 weeks, I mean, you could try perhaps Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support and see if they can do one of their online calls with you. It would be well worth it. If the last time someone watched you was day 10 and you're now 4 weeks, it would be well worth getting someone to watch you. You would be welcome to come to clinic, but at the moment we're booking right into the 5th of July. So if you can get an appointment with, because this is positioning attachment, if you can get an appointment with Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support online, get them to watch you online, then actually they will probably be able to see what's happening. And if that doesn't resolve it, then by all means we'll see you in breastfeeding clinic. So Helen, I think it is worth going and having a look. Whether colic drops will work, I don't know, but certainly getting positioning and attachment spot on, and it could be a millimetre here or there, will make a big difference. That would be well worth trying. As I say, it's often that you're moving your breast or that you're flicking the head over, which we call hooking. So maybe get someone to film you and then watch yourself and see what you're doing. Or alternatively get hold of Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support, see if they can help you too. So I think it's definitely something that can be improved, and you should not have to carry on. It's amazing, you know, you've done a fantastic job. You're 4 weeks down the line and you're still going, so absolutely brilliant. Well done, Helen. But do access some support now. Good luck with that. Callie Jenkins says, can we bring in colostrum from the fridge if we are booked in for a cesarean? Yes, you can. Can I suggest you bring it in a cool box with ice blocks? We have a bit of an issue sometimes with colostrum going missing. I would much prefer it that you keep it on you. If you're having a C-section, then you will know when it's going to be and you can plan ahead. Once colostrum is defrosted, it has to be used within 12 hours. So the best thing would be is to bring it in and do it actually while you're waiting for your C-section. So you could bring in some colostrum from the day before, so you haven't got to your 24 hours. Or you could also be expressing whilst you're waiting for your C-section. So when you go into the elective section bay, you'll be in a little room with 4-bedded bay. You can put your curtains around and do some hand expressing then as well. If you want to bring frozen in, bring it in a freezer bag with cool blocks to keep it frozen. And as long as it's still frozen, it can be used within, so 12 hours after defrosting. Our problem, as I say, is that things do go a bit missing because it's a whacking great hospital. I'm on level 5 today, but we're on 7 levels, and it might get put in a fridge somewhere, and then who remembers when the shift changes where it's gone after that. So I prefer that you hang on to it. So if you bring it in fresh, it can be fine at room temperature for 24 hours. If you bring it in frozen or chilled, bring it in a cool box. So if it's just chilled, just from your fridge, it will be fine for many hours because it will be in a cool box. I hope that helps. Paula has said, I just have a quick question. My son was admitted with jaundice after birth. Level 5, that's where I am. They introduced the bottle as they weren't sure if he was having any colostrum. I hand expressed the colostrum, but my question is, why the bottle and not an alternative way of feeding? He still doesn't latch onto my nipple, just the nipple shields. Paula, I'm really sorry to hear that. And I'm looking at your surname, you're probably Paula. We do have alternative ways of feeding. Why that didn't happen at the time, I think it's often down to the mother to say, I would prefer not to use a bottle, and that's perhaps something we can look at changing. We do sometimes use cups, and we have them on the wards, and I've got one here, she says. I knew I'd seen it. We have little cups that can be helpful, but they do cause quite a lot of spillage. They're really good for prem babies, not so good for term babies. So from that point of view, and also not all the staff are very confident using them. So it's a case of the confidence. When it comes to being concerned about a baby, sometimes a bottle is definitely a way of ensuring that a baby's getting the volumes. But I take that on board, Paula, and I think we can put that forward at team meetings and say, can we talk to parents about alternatives? And I notice you say you're using the nipple shield. So with the nipple shield, if you want to try and get your baby off the nipple shield, as you're probably aware that it's very much they're in charge. The baby has the control on that one. But things that you could try and get off the nipple shield might be catching your baby just as they're waking up, so they're not desperate for a feed. Even literally picking them up when they're asleep and seeing if they'll do it then. Starting the feed, letting the milk come into the shield and whipping the shield off and trying to get the baby on at that point too. What you want to do is try and keep it a positive experience. You don't want your baby to be upset, you don't want your baby to be crying, you want to try and keep it as positive as possible. And I'm going to go back to skin, which I mentioned at the beginning of the session. Skin to skin will bring out your baby's innate breastfeeding and breast-seeking behaviour. So that's a really good thing to try, Paula, to see if you can get your baby to go back to the breast without a shield. So skin to skin, trying to feed your baby when they're sleepy, and maybe just getting the feed going, and once the milk is going really well, whip the shield off and try the baby then and see if you'll get them on, because the milk's coming already. So those might be things worth trying. And I will take on board what you said about why was a bottle given. I will have a chat with the team and say, see if we can remember to offer people alternatives to a bottle. I hope that helped, Paolo. Amina's come back. Thank you. I'll get the surgeon's name and drop you an email. That would be great. Thank you very much. Michelle has said, hi there, my baby's 10 weeks now, has recently started refusing the breast in the late afternoon evenings. She never does it during the morning or nighttime feeds. Seems strange and like she's angry. Is there something I could be doing? She's exclusively breastfeeding. Not wishing to scare you, Michelle. I wonder if you've got slightly less milk in the evenings. And that maybe, although that milk is fantastic, it's chock-a-block full of fat, maybe your baby's got used to having that bigger volume. Maybe try some compressions, because that will increase. Hopefully they're going on. Are you saying she's going on? I'm just checking what you've written. Never does it through the night. And it's funny. And the other thing, I wonder, have you got others around? Because sometimes babies get so enamoured with older siblings. If you've got older siblings, are they running around? Is that distracting your baby that they're not wanting to go on? And again, go back to, I keep mentioning skin to skin, but it is an amazing thing. Trying skin to skin to like down regulate if they're getting upset, and seeing how they get on, and see if they'll attach in skin to skin if you can. But compressions, if you can get the baby on, so compressions, I think we've shown many a time before, are taking a nice big handful of breast and taking it back against the chest wall and in and hold, and that will just deliver a bit more milk. So if the baby's complaining that it's maybe a little slower in the later part of the day, and if it's only just happened, then you have got that milk supply. It will come, if it's had a dip, it will go back up again. But just delivering a bit more milk to the baby might encourage them to stay on. So just big handful, in and hold, keep it while they're sucking, release. They start sucking, in and hold. When they stop sucking, release. And your hand can be anywhere, so it could be here, here, this hand, here, anywhere. But it's very important that it's in and hold. Keep it while they suck, release, in and hold, and release. Okay, so see how you get on with that. See if that tries to encourage them to stay on, if that's what you're struggling with, and just trying to make it a really nice thing. If they are, if your baby's growing appropriately, 10 weeks, if their baby's still growing, then maybe just if they're upset, go do something else and come back to it and see what happens. What we don't want is you two to be having a bit of a tussle and a bit of a battle, because that becomes a negative experience, and we don't want that to happen. So, if your baby's been growing appropriate to age, pooing and weeing as we would expect, then maybe they're happy to just front load their feeds in the morning and overnight, and quite happy not to have quite so much latter part of the day. But see how you get on. If it's continuing, Michelle, I would suggest you contact your health visitor for a bit more support. At 10 weeks, you come under your health visitor and just get them to have a look. There is the enhanced breastfeeding support within the health visiting team. I know that at the moment, just due to staff changes, it isn't completely even throughout the county, but hopefully someone will be able to give you a hand and see how you get on. But I'd go back to skin to skin. I know that sounds mad at 10 weeks, but it isn't. It really will work too. Charlotte has said, we're home from Devon and Alicia loved her special time with Granny, and I did have a few tears the first night as Alicia had to go to A&E. Oh, you did mention that, I remember. I bet your mother loved having you, Charlotte. Hannah has said, I have a 36-week scan. Can I take someone, or is that the one I go by myself? Hannah, I'm not the one to ask, I'm afraid. I don't believe there's any restrictions anymore, though. But this is definitely a question to put to your midwife, or to your Ask the Midwife sessions that there are on Facebook Live. This one's specifically about feeding. I will say, when you come in for the 36-week scan, make sure you pick up your copy of Off to the Best Start, which is the leaflet. Oh, you can't see it. That you get given at your there it is, at your 36-week appointment. So we'll have lots about feeding in it. So that's your Off to the Best Start leaflet. Make sure you ask for a copy of it. It's a fantastic leaflet. It's not wordy. It's got some nice pictures talking about why breastfeeding is important for you and your baby, and what it protects against, what happens after birth. And there you go, a lovely baby skin to skin, just as I was saying. And then it talks about how to breastfeed, some fantastic positioning and attachment pictures, signs that your baby's feeding well. So this is, is your baby getting enough food? Poos and wees to count for a lot. Top tips in there, expressing, which is what a lot of you have been doing before you've had your babies. And then the poos and wees that we expect that will tell us your baby's getting enough milk. So if you remember, we talked about it many a time, when your baby's born, they're going to have these black, thick, sticky meconium poos. Within a couple of days, they're going to go more greeny, they're going to get easier to get off the bottom. These are impossible. We're having a laugh when we ask you to take it off with cotton wool and water. It's impossible. This much easier, starts coming off much more easily, and you're like, okay, that works. And then by day 4, they should be yellow. So remember, yellow poos by day 4 is really, really reassuring. And the wee should be going up every day. So in the first day, your baby may only have 1 or 2 wees, in the second day 2 or 3, third day 3 or 4, you get the picture, till we get to day 6, and we want 6 heavy wet nappies from day 6 onwards. So this is a really important page, page 17. Anyone who's got this book at home and is worried about their baby and whether they're getting enough, this is worth having a look at. And then how dads can support, and just more information. So this is 36-week scan. Make sure you pick the copy up, because it will be given out to you at that appointment. But whether you could have I'm pretty sure you can have someone with you, but please check. Don't rely on me, because I'm not totally up to date on that one. Amy's just come back and said thank you. She'll check out, which is good. I'm trying to remember what we were chatting about. Yeah, okay, we were chatting about the solids, weren't we? Yeah. Alicia has said, can babies actively feed while asleep? My baby Comfort sucks often after a feed. She follows the feeding pattern and then sucks for comfort with the occasional swallows. If she doesn't come off herself, then eventually I detach her. But if she's still swallowing, occasionally should I be leaving her on? So the theory behind it, Alicia, is that actually babies should come off on their own. So we anticipate a feed will last somewhere between 5 and 40 minutes on each side. So that's 5 to 40 on one, or 5 to 40 on the other. We do think babies should come off on their own, and I'm just wondering if I've got the picture of the baby that comes off. Yes, there we go. That's the picture of a baby. That's what we sort of anticipate they'll do. They come off looking sozzled. They look milk drunk. Now some babies will just come off by opening their mouth and just letting the nipple fall out, and others come off really dramatically and they'll do a and off they come, spit the nipple out. So they're very, very different in how they do it. But we do anticipate a baby should do it on its own. Things you could do to help back to compressions are, if your baby's getting very sleepy at the breast and you're thinking, have you finished, haven't you finished? Add some compressions in, because that's going to deliver a bit more milk, and hopefully they'll go, oh yeah, okay, no, I'm fine, I don't need any more, and I'll come off. So remember, I've just mentioned compressions. That's a big handful of breast, back against the chest wall, in and hold. It's that in and hold, and it can be, your hand can be anywhere on the breast. There's not just one way of doing it, but it's that in, hold, deliver that bit more milk, and see if that encourages your baby to come off. The other thing you can do is, it sounds counterproductive, but is actually to push your baby in further. Bring them in and do your compressions, and then hopefully they'll let go. If they're really not sucking, you could then, I'm just going to move my laptop off my lap. You could then, if you're there, just lift your breast and see what they do. And if it comes out, it just slides out. Sometimes babies will suddenly go, oh, no, I wanted more, and they go, oh, and on they go again. So that's where you can go back to compressions, making sure the best view of holding your baby really well in, pressure on the shoulders. So you would have your baby in well, and you'll be doing compressions, and you're really pushing them on from the shoulders. So in and compressions, keeping it, and letting go, getting it going. And hopefully then your baby will go, oh yeah, okay, that's fine, I've had enough, and off they'll come, either dramatically or just let it go. So yes, in an ideal world, they come off on their own, somewhere between 5 and 40 minutes. Because we talked about the fattier part and the waterier part of the milk, which together makes this fantastic feed, and it all blends over a period of time. That way we make sure that they've got that lovely fattier milk in their tummy that tells them they're full, and that's what we're hoping they'll do. See how you get on. Try some compressions with that. It is difficult though when they just love being there. Just to say, you talked about the comfort sucking. That is a really important part of feeding. It is the most amazing mothering tool to be able to breastfeed your baby. I don't know how old your baby is, Alicia, but when you get to the stage where your baby's having their vaccinations, being able to then put your baby to the breast is absolutely wonderful. If your baby ever gets an ear infection, or they don't feel well, or even if they just bit their own finger or something happened, being able to breastfeed your baby is the most amazing mothering tool. It just calms them, soothes them, it's where they want to be, and they just re-engage, and it's just that, you are the answer to their problems. So don't underestimate how important the comfort feeding part of it is. It's all really important. There's a lovely saying on the Baby Friendly website, and it says, I feed my baby for comfort. The nutrition sorts itself out. And that's why we say, you know, your baby will feed a minimum of 8 to 13 times in the 24 hours, and sometimes there may be more. And as long as you just feed your baby whenever they're asking, then their nutrition will sort itself out. So good luck with that, Alicia, and I hope things, and I hope your baby starts to work out, I've had enough and comes off. But you are doing a fabulous job. Callie's come back and said, thanks, brilliant. Helen said, thank you, we do the Flipple technique, and I had no issues with my first and fed her for a year, but we'll try video and call you for an appointment. Oh, Helen, I know it's so difficult when you're onto a second child. We talk about having a new dance partner, and that's the issue. And you know, we see many mums who've had a first child, no problem, fed fantastically, and then the second one comes along, and it's a bit like, what? How did this happen? So, it would be well worth just getting someone to have a quick peek and you know, and see if someone can have a watch of you. But yeah, just it's so difficult when you've had a really good first experience and then the next one comes along and it's slightly different. But see how you get on. Paula said, thank you. I will take back what you said, Paula. Michelle has said, we'll try skin to skin. She does eventually latch after a while. Tried compression and the milk comes out fine. She's my first baby, so no siblings around. So no distractions then, Michelle, unless you've got a wonderful dog running around or something. But I think if she's getting upset, stop. You know, as long as you've got, you know, as long as your baby's growing at the rest of the time, you know, they can take in the milk. We think a baby takes in a finite amount of milk in a 24-hour period, not evenly. So they'll have periods of the day when they feed a lot, periods of the day when they feed less. And it might be that at that point in time it's not just working, and hopefully this is just a blip and it's going to pass soon. So, Helen has said, would the watery milk cause lots more wet and dirty nappies over the thicker creamer milk? I've never known a baby like him, and his nappies seem to be constant flow and swell down to his knees. Now, not necessarily, it's the volume that will make, you know, so obviously there's a good volume going in, Helen. It's the volume of milk going in is going to make the difference. The balance of the milk makes a difference to the colour. So if a baby is not accessing that fattier milk, and it's not just time, it's that efficiency of removing the milk. If the baby's not doing that as efficiently, then what we see is a greener nappy. So you might find and some people will be out there and will say, oh, my baby's nappies are green sometimes. That's fine. You know, just green sometimes is fine, that will happen. What we want though is normally a yellow nappy, like the picture I showed you. You know, so we're hoping that most babies will have a yellow stool, and usually it'll be flecky, little white flecks in it, and that's what you'd be looking for. A nappy that is more on the greeny spectrum may be a baby that is getting this slight lactose imbalance. This does not mean they're lactose intolerant. This means they have got a bit more lactose going in and not quite enough lactase to break it down. So they're not lactose intolerant, they just haven't got the lactase to break it down. So thinking about the volume, I think that the nappies you're getting is more to do with the volume, it's just, I think that would be a lot of it. The colour may be more of an indicator of what's going on. And when we talk about, and I've mentioned this, when we talk about this feeding, I'm just looking for a little picture, see if I can find one. Yes. When we talk about this the fattier and slightly less fatty, it's all on a spectrum. It doesn't start as one and go to the other, you know, just like turning off a switch. It's a spectrum. I'm looking for the right picture. Here we go. I'm not sure it's going to be that obvious on here. So this is a picture, and if you look here, so this is going to be reading back to front because of the way the camera works. If you look here, this is the beginning of a feed, and if you look at the bottom, you can see the baby's going chomp, 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 chomp. And this is the feed pattern here. And as the baby goes on, they get rewarded with the letdown. That's where the volume, this is the milk, the volume of milk goes up suddenly and then drops off toward the end of the feed. And what you can see is it's lighter at this end and darker at this end, but there's still dark dots here, but the dark dots get a bit more and more and more over here. So this is the change over the feed of starting with a slightly more watery let down milk, moving into the higher fat milk as the feed progresses. So when you're feeding a baby in an evening and you're sitting there thinking, I don't feel very full, I feel full in the morning but I don't feel full in the evening, your baby's getting lots of this. Not high volume, but lots of high fat milk. In the morning, when you're feeling really full and you put your baby on, they're getting a lot more of this. But it all balances out, and we don't need to worry about it unless there's a problem. So when you just carry on feeding your babies and it should sort itself out. If it doesn't, it will show in a baby that is colicky, or a baby that is unsettled, a baby with green stools, and these are all the things that we might be looking at. So generally we say to you, go out there, just breastfeed, and if there were a problem, it will present itself and we can deal with it then. But it is down to positioning and attachment as always. Helen said, I do seem to overproduce a lot too. Is that normally the more, sorry, it's skipped down. Yeah, sorry, so it's too quick. The one came straight up afterwards and moved down. So is that normally the more watery milk that comes out? His nappy always seems to be the mustard yellow, no green. Brilliant, no green, really reassuring, Helen. He doesn't do the long draws so much because I think it just jets into his mouth with minimal effort. He chokes on it a lot too, so unlatches often and it will just keep spraying out. Well, you obviously have a really, really good letdown. I would say it is worth just getting someone to look, because he should be able to control the flow, Helen. And what we find is that the baby's not going on as well as they can do, it actually can lead to an oversupply because they keep stimulating your milk. So this might be all going hand in hand. So I think it's well worth you doing a little bit of research, get some support, see if someone can watch you, and hopefully that will make things a lot better. I can see that there's a bit more coming in. So would the watery milk cause lots more? No, we talked about that. I'm just making sure I've got all of yours in here. It's amazing when the milk sprays, isn't it? It's incredible because it can go really quite far. And yeah, so just put pressure on. Then supposedly if you put pressure on the side, it should help as well. But yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And I know it can be a problem in itself to have more milk than you need, but actually coping with an oversupply, although can be debilitating, is much better than having to cope with not enough milk, which is so heartbreaking. So for those of you who haven't had your babies yet, you know, stimulating your milk supply in the early days is really, really crucial. We don't see many women who have problems with an oversupply, but we see an awful lot of women who do not have enough milk to feed their babies. So when you have your baby, if there are any concerns about you getting your baby to remove the milk well, please hand express, encourage milk to come in, seek support, keep asking for help. Babies need to feed a minimum of 8 times in a 24-hour period. If your baby is sleepy, you need to be hand expressing and getting milk into your baby. It's not a bonus. Them sleeping through the night is not a good thing. Babies should be feeding frequently. Babies are not geared up for going long periods of time without feeding. So we don't, you know, it is not, if we turn up to, you know, the community midwives turn up to see you and you say, oh, it's wonderful, my baby slept through the night, the community midwife's heart will drop, because actually your baby should be awake feeding numerous times through the night initially. So it is really common. As babies get older, they sleep longer periods of time, but in these in the first few weeks and months, babies need to have food very, very frequently. They do not have the reserves to cope with not having frequent feeds. So this goes back to me saying, you know, we need to really establish your milk supply in the first 2 weeks. It's when you can lay the foundations down. Trying to increase your milk supply beyond the first 2 weeks is extremely difficult. It's very, very challenging to push a milk supply after the first 2 weeks. So getting it going in the early days has the biggest chance of you having a really good milk supply. Anyway, moving on, because I've said enough about that. Helen has said, my 2-year-old has had a fair few face shots, have to carry a muslin round just to wipe muslin round to wipe down the surrounding surfaces and people after a feed. I love it. I love the picture you're painting, Helen. That's making me giggle. I love it. So anyway, moving on. Charlotte has said, me and Alicia are feeling under the weather. Oh, you poor darling. Well, I hope you get looked after by someone, Charlotte, whoever you've got with you in the car. Nice cup of tea. I think that's what I'm off to have in a minute. I've done a long clinic this morning, come straight into here. I need to go do some telephone calls. So anybody who might be on here, I've called your phone this morning, I'll be phoning you back shortly. Michelle said, thank you for your advice. Maybe I'm thinking she needs a feed when she's had enough for the day. She's lots of nappies in the day and I have leaks when she goes more than 3 hours, even now. So I don't think it's a supply issue. It doesn't sound like it. What else would be an indication? Well, if you're leaking and she's growing and she's got lots of dirty nappies, you haven't got a supply problem. No issue. Just might be she doesn't want to feed at that point in time. So I would just, leave her for a few minutes and offer it again a little bit later and see how she gets on. As I said, they don't need to. In fact, babies don't feed at regular intervals. They feed frequently, but not regularly. So it's really common that you'll have periods of time where a baby will sleep for slightly longer. In my own personal experience, my eldest, I remember, would sleep the longest period of time in the morning, and that would be after the morning feed. And it was always a bit like, why couldn't you do that at night? It'd be so nice if they did it at night, but no, they don't. So I think, Michelle, if everything else is reassuring, don't worry. Your baby will take what she wants at other times in the day. She might feed a little bit more in the evening or the morning. The evenings are difficult, but overnight or the day. So no concerns in that perspective. Then if she's gaining and pooing and weeing appropriate to age, it sounds like you're doing a great job. Right, we've got a few minutes left. If anybody wants to put any more questions through, I hope I've answered all the ones that you've put so far in enough detail. So I was going to talk about where to get help for those of you that haven't had your babies. So when you have your baby, your Blue Notes will stay with us, and what you'll get is this booklet, and it's your postnatal care plan. Those of you who've had your babies will recognise it. We're going to change it, we're going to add some more bits to it, but at the moment this is what it looks like. It hasn't changed for a while. And the front page has got all the telephone numbers on the front. So it has all the different teams, plus the maternity assessment unit. And the thing to bear in mind on this is that actually we have 2 units, 2 of our midwifery-led units are open 24 hours a day. So rather than struggling and being concerned at night, if you've got concerns, you can always phone one of the midwifery-led units for a quick chat and a bit of reassurance. So Wallingford and Banbury both have 24-hour cover. So that's the first thing to think about. This will be completed whilst you're if you have your baby in the hospital with us. So this page is all about your birth, and this page too. And then we have a checklist. So every day we check you, things like how your legs are, how your breasts are feeling, what if you've had a cesarean section, how your wound is, how your perineum is, are you managing to go to the toilet? So that goes all on here. And then we do a check on the baby every day. And guess what? Poos and wees are on here because that's the most important thing from my point of view, because I really know then if your baby's doing all right, because that's what you can look at. So we ask you about the poos and wees, but we also look at the colour of your baby, what their eyes are like, are they nice and clear, what the cord looks like, is it still on, is it clean, when it comes off, what does it look like? So that's all on here, and a little bit about feeding. Then this page, and this is why I'm telling you about it, because this book is as much for you as it is for us. This page is headed up here, congratulations on the birth of your baby. And it talks about feeding, and it talks about breastfeeding, not just babies going on and actively feeding, but the whole process they go through. So starting with the licking, and I mentioned at the beginning, babies have to familiarise and learn about your breast. Your breast is the only breast they'll ever meet, and you're the only breast they'll ever understand. So they have no ideas there are any other sorts of breasts out there. So they learn by licking, and that's how we start. We look at licking, and then we look at rooting and trying to attach, and then attaching well, and then really attaching well, big deep sucks. So we show you that it's a process. It doesn't just happen. It takes time. And then this is an opportunity to write down your feeds. And then before you leave us, your care, whether it's in the hospital or so in one of the midwifery-led units, you should have been seen breastfeeding, and we should watch you and help you and point you in the right direction if there's any issues. We should have taught you how to hand express, because that's your first aid, because if you're having any problems, I've already mentioned hand expressing. If you're having any problems, hand express is going to be your first aid. If you're at home, it's the first night at home, and your baby's out for the count, and you're thinking that's too long, I think you need some food, it might be getting near 4 or 5 hours, and you're thinking you need some food. You can hand express and still give it to a sleeping baby. Or you've got a baby that is screaming, and you can't get them to attach, you can hand express and give them milk that way. So hand expressing is your first aid. Please, please do not leave our care unless you know how to hand express. And then if we've got a plan to put in place, we'll write it here. So if you see one of us, we'll be writing it in here. And then this is a fantastic checklist. This is before 72 hours, so when your baby's less than 72 hours, and after 72 hours. And if you look through it, it says things like, how often have they weed, what are their poos like, how's the baby, how often they've fed, how the baby's behaving at the breast, what does the nipple look like after the feed. That tells us so much information. And if the answer to the question is all in the green, you're doing an amazing job. If anything is in the yellow, you might need a little bit more help. And this should be done whilst you're in the birth environment, so here at the hospital or in the midwifery-led units, and then again when you go home, and this is after 72 hours. And you can do it yourself. It's really good. If anyone's out there with a baby that you're still under the care of the midwives and you've got your postnatal care plan, have a look at that. This will really be reassuring, or it will highlight needs a bit more help. And then at the back we just have some pages where the midwives can write. So this is your postnatal care plan. So the reason I mention it is because you've got help. You can get help from your midwifery units. You get help when you're on the wards. We have midwives and MSWs who are all trained to help with feeding. And then when you go home, you have help up to 10 days or beyond. So the midwives will care for you for 10 days after your baby's born. If your baby's taking a little bit more time to get back to birth weight, they'll keep you on and you will stay under their care until your baby's at birth weight and maybe beyond if it's been very slow. So the midwives will continue to see you. So let's say you had your baby today and you went home, let's had your baby yesterday and you went home today, then you would see a midwife tomorrow. So we don't leave you for a long time. We do carry on supporting you. And then from there on, you have your midwives and your MSWs looking after you in the community. You're going to have your health visitor after your discharge from the midwives. You also have things like Oxfordshire Breastfeeding Support, which I think I've mentioned already today, which is doing, they're a great organisation and they're offering online support at the moment and hopefully moving to face-to-face support going forward. You've got La Leche League, they're also a fantastic organisation, Abingdon Baby Cafe, and there's us at the Breastfeeding Clinic. So, and we will do telephone support and we do breastfeeding clinics as well. So we would triage if you phone us and we work out whether it's appropriate for you to come and see us and signpost you somewhere else if it's not appropriate to come to us. But we won't just leave you, we will support you with that. So please access support if you are just about to have your baby and you run into some problems, or you've had your baby and you're having problems. Please access support. Don't wait, it's better to get it sooner rather than later. So I'm just going to flick through because I'm practically out of time. That one. So Michelle, she says she's reassured now, but she's great. Charlotte said, still wanted to listen to you talk. Hopefully soon they'll both feel better. I hope you do too. Right, have you got any more questions for me, or am I going to have an early start today? That just shows you. Have Naomi here. We fill the hour easily. In fact, we did about an hour and a half last time. So, any further questions? And the other thing, I was talking about help, and you can actually access our videos. I keep mentioning them for those still on. If you go onto the Oxford University Hospital's website, OUH, go OUH maternity feeding. Just put those three bits into Google. Our website will come up. Our page on the website will come up, and you can go onto the link and you can access 7 videos that we've done. We are not going to win any awards, no BAFTAs, no Oscars, but we do get the information across. There's one about skin to skin. We look like rabbits in headlamps on that one, but it does get the information across. We've done about bottle feeding, alternative feeding methods. We've talked about responsiveness and relationship building and how important it is, that relationship you have with your baby, because you're always bathing your baby's brain in oxytocin, and every time you interact with your baby, you are fertilising your baby's brain and building this happy baby going forward that becomes a happy adult in the long term. So there's one about responsiveness, we do positioning and attachment, we've got pumping and hand expressing. So it's well worth going and having a look, and there might be something there that you find beneficial and useful. Other good websites are like the Baby Friendly Initiative, so UNICEF Baby Friendly Initiative is really, really good. Some great information on there too. So there's plenty of support out there. I'm going to call it a day, I think. Charlotte's come back, said, thanks, hon. Alicia was waving at you with a pepper cuddly toe. Hello, Alicia. Right, just to say that we have not got Facebook Live for 2 weeks now. I'm on annual leave, so it will be in 3 weeks' time will be the next session. I'll get Maternity Voices Partnership to put that up to say that it won't be a session for 2 weeks. So we're having a quick break for 2 weeks and we'll be back again then. So save up all your questions or contact us directly via our email or our telephone. Thank you very much to one and all for the questions, and I think it was Amina. I'm looking forward to receiving an email and we'll sort out what's happening with you. Yeah, Amina, give me an email. Sooner the better if that's possible, and I'll get that back sorted out before I go on leave. All right, thank you very much, and goodbye to one and all, and have a good couple of weeks. Goodbye.